So for the longest time, I thought it was Nerdy Prunes Must Die, and then I actually watched the musical. Prudes. Nerdy Prudes Must Die. Hi, I'm Sage. Welcome to my channel. I'm a dyslexic writer and an artist who has long-term tendinitis in their wrist. Please join me as I restage Nerdy Prudes Must Die. Why am I doing this? Frankly, I don't have the time to make an animatic about it. Or several, depending on how obsessed I get. I'm an artist in my final year at university, so I am busy. So busy, in fact, this video was recorded on January 16th. I am also overqualified to do this. I have a GCSE and A-level in drama, and both grades came from written elements about staging and lighting. And finally, I'm way too obsessed with this show. I finally watched it in the beginning of October, and I've been listening to it non-stop on repeat since. On to staging. The biggest change that I'm going to be making to this restage is that it's going to be made in the round. So essentially, they're just going to be performing in the middle of a circle. Hear me out. The idea I have for this is that they're going to be in like a big hall area space, and they're going to build like a large just wooden gazebo. Inside of that will be where they perform. There'll be multiple doorways going around. The cast can enter and then the audience can enter when they come in, and at some point they'll all get closed for dramatic effect. So the cast is kind of just outside of those areas most of the time. The audience is going to be sat in different sections, so kind of blocks, but the first row will always be empty, as will the back row. Because of the shape that they're in, the audience will naturally make a circle shape, and in that circle shape there is a remote controlled spinning disc which will be slightly leveled up and can just rotate. Whenever there's something important going on, someone will stand on that disc. The set is very similar to the set of the actual theatre production, so things written all over the walls, Max Jägerman's branding everywhere. The only difference is that I've added lockers in, mainly so the cast can get props out if they need them. I think getting them out of lockers would look quite cool because it's set in high school, but also the lockers can have branding on them as well, especially Jägerman and everything like that, branding specific lockers that gives the impression that these are the Nerdy Prudes lockers. So, general lighting. The idea I have is that there will be a rig built over the center of the stage, kind of in a rectangle squarish shape. Now, I'm no engineer. I don't know if that's actually makeable. So for the sake of this video and this entire presentation, suspend your disbelief. Please. The rig would contain a pin spot on the spinning disc, large floodlights that can make washes over the main stage, maybe 2 or 3 so multiple different colours can be projected at once, a couple of Fresnels directed over the centre stage as well, and 2 or 3 gobos which will have outlines in them, which I'll explain later. There will be LEDs placed under the spinning discs, as well as LEDs up the aisles, and then 5 lights in the back row pointed upwards towards the exit. That will also be explained later. For this entire presentation, I've only focused really on the musical numbers, because a lot of the other lighting and staging around it won't change too much. And also, if I have anything important to say that happens after the musical numbers, I could just put it in here. So on to High School is Killing Me. The spinning disc in the middle of the song will be moving at all times, and Ruth and Richie will be originally starting in the audience before stepping up onto the disc as they sing the opening couple of lines. The rest of the cast will be entering up the aisles in between the audience and grabbing the first row of seats and pointing them away from the disc so that they're all facing outwards towards the audience. While this is happening, the lighting for this is that there will be a red pin on Richie and Ruth when they're singing. This shifts to a red Fresnel as the cast slowly begin to place down their chairs, which then shifts into a white and red wash when they're all singing the chorus. Finally, when Steph and Peter get on the disc, there's a white pin spot on them as Steph discusses cheating off of Peter. The performance. So when Richie and Ruth are stood on the disc, I'm kind of picturing them back to back, similarly to how Jinx and Milo were in the Guns for Hire scene from Arcane Season 1. I think that that's just going to be effective as well, because there's a height difference between them anyway. On the spinning disc as well, it'll just look quite haunting. The choreography is going to be the same as the original show, just done facing the audience in a circle and they're facing outwards. There's also going to be a greater emphasis on them moving in the seats so that the audience can get to see them all. So they're just shifting seats, interacting with each other as Peter and Steph are talking. Steph gets thrown up onto the disc when she's called upon, and then she drags Peter up there with her. Pete keeps trying to move away from her, but she keeps following him and just hey, let me cheat off you. After they step off, no one else will step on the disc until Grace calls Miss Marbury on them for cheating. Literal monster. So essentially, this staging is very similar to the original theatre production, just because I liked the way that it was choreographed and it was chaotic enough that it still worked in a circle sense. No one ever stands on the disc until Max is on there, because it's quite important that Max is that overhead figure in this song. When Max stands on the disc, it stops. He has to manually move himself around as if he's the one commanding the stage. There's a white wash over the whole stage, and whenever someone talks about Max, red pin spot flash on the empty disc, which is kind of just like showing his presence even though he's not there. So when Max does step on the disc, the white pin spot appears and it never leaves until the end of the song. When he's on the disc, red Fresnels are going to be slowly appearing and disappearing over the stage to illuminate the rest of the cast. Performance. Like I said earlier, when Max is on the disc, people are dancing around him and he's moving himself because it gives him that visual power. A little bit after that, Max only gets off the disc when he sees Grace, and then she ends up standing on it because she has more power over him. When he goes to ask her to hold the books, she steps off so that he'll tower over her, but because she still has the power, she can say no and move on with her day. Bully/bury the bully. In this song, a lot of them are kind of like fighting to be heard, fighting to voice their opinions. So there's going to be a little bit of a fight over who's standing on the disc before Grace finally takes charge. But once they're all on the same page and they're all doing their dances together, they'll all be off the disc and no one stands on it again. It happens again when they kill Max. Everyone's fighting, they're all a little bit frazzled, trying to figure out what to do, and then Grace stands back on the disc and takes control of the situation. There's a blue wash over the stage for location purposes. There's going to be like colourful Fresnels over the stage when it's like the happy-go-lucky Bully the Bully song. But when Max dies, the wash turns red and the LEDs up the aisle slowly start to glow in the Lord of Black colours. The wash stays red and the Fresnels are now white for the rest of the Bury the Bully song. The staging, dancing actions are all pretty similar to the original, except they're now in a circle and they're going to be just doing it in a circle. So essentially it just looks like someone at like a high school club has started a conga line, essentially, but it works because that's the vibe. Nerdy prudes must die. Just before the song starts, Richie's going to be stood on the spinning disc. You know, he's talking about how he loves to be alive, how he loves his life, and then it will stop and then Max will speak. He'll get off the disc trying to escape Max, but after running around for a bit, he'll end up back on the disc where he gets quote unquote trapped. Max then jumps onto the disc with him and Richie ends up dropping to the ground, so now that Max is permanently stood over Richie. Similarly to when Max dies, red wash with white Fresnels, there will be strobe lighting when Max walks around to give him that supernatural feel, but also to mask where he is to the audience, so it's kind of like stop-starty where he's moving. A white pin stop will appear when Richie gets trapped on the disc, and it kind of just gives a visual element to him being stuck. And then eventually everything will fade out to just a white pin spot when they're all singing. Everything will eventually fade out to just a white pin spot on Max and Richie when they're doing the whole "Who will pray for me" section. And then eventually it will cut to black when Max starts laughing and then kills Richie. So Richie will be running throughout the audience trying to get out. I really liked in the original show when Max closed the doors and they all shut. So I've kind of over-highlighted that with the multiple doors. So when Richie tries to get out, they all start closing one by one, and he keeps running around, and eventually all the doors are closed. The lighting will hide where Max is standing, so it's more of a shock when he appears near Richie. The disc finally starts spinning when the song is at its climax. Max is stood over Richie, and the cast is singing in the now open doorways, facing away from the audience, so essentially they're not watching what's happening. Hatchet Town. So originally, a lot of the people who are questioning the mayor are going to be sat in the empty front row, just so that they can stand up and question the mayor, and they each get their own. So they get their own moment to have attention on them. The mayor will be stood on the disc. When they're being accused, the person being accused is going to be pushed onto the disc, and that's going to constantly be swapping, which is going to show how chaotic the town is becoming and how they're just accusing everyone. There's going to be a white pin spot on the mayor, which slowly extends out into a wash when the whole song starts. There'll be blue and red Fresnels shifting on and off when they're dancing and singing, and then it drops to black when the song ends. See, that says starts. I must have written this at like 1 a.m. because I meant ends. Staging, dancing, and actions are all pretty similar to the original show, except they're in a circle and in sometimes shifting direction. So when they're doing the little triangle shape that they had in the original theatre production, instead of that, they'll just have it in a circle and they'll just keep shifting directions, going like from left to right so no one gets dizzy. Just for once. Ruth avidly avoids standing on the disc until she gains her confidence to stand on it. However, when she starts to become self-conscious again, she steps off of it quickly. Other than that, it's very similar to the original production where she's walking around, acting out what she's saying, doing all of that stuff. There'll be a white and yellow wash over the stage, and there's going to be like a gobo for grass on the floor when she's like fantasizing about her life as a 40-year-old. The wash slowly gets closer to the disc until she stands on it and sings the chorus, like a real theatrical solo song. Once she gets self-conscious again, the wash expands out, and then the same process will happen when she does the second chorus. Like I said, it's all pretty similar to the original version, just because it was very, very good at communicating what it needed to do. If I Loved You. Wow, there's not a lot on this PowerPoint. Okay, Steph and Pete are dancing around the disc like they're fighting, but they're not really fighting. Are they fighting? Are they flirting? Who knows at this point? And when they sing together, they're gonna jump on that disc and get really close to each other. And then when they realize they're close to each other, they'll jump back off the disc. So pink Fresnels, white spots of lighting somewhere, definitely going to be a pin spot on the disc. Heart gobos on the floor to show that they're hiding their feelings, making it look like a disco-ish because it was a great song. The Summoning. The Lords in Black are going to start behind the audience in the empty back row. And then when they start laughing maniacally, they're literally going to crawl over the audience to get to Steph, Pete, and Grace. The dance they do when they're circling the teens is going to be very feast or famine, kind of like going back and forth, chanting, just being really creepy. When they're summoning the Lords, the LEDs are going to start lighting up in each color. So like each LED strip of the audience up one like lane is going to light up in one color. So eventually at some point all the LEDs are just going to be shifting in the Lord of Black colors, and from above it's going to kind of look like a pentagram shape. I'm cooking. Steph, Pete, and Grace are all going to stay on the disc for this entire song, so there'll be a Fresnel spot on it just so it can... They have that freedom, but it's also like more of a mystical vibe to it. So when Wiggly first says his line, and I can't remember what it is for the life of me, and I feel like such a fake fan, there's going to be a backlight / front light to project the shadows of the Lords in their human forms onto the wall to make them look really large. So, like, it will happen for each one because there's a lot of beats that happen. So on each beat, each Lord has their own backlight turn on. Then all the lights turn off. They come back on and they start crawling over the audience. There might be some strobe / flashing lights when the gods are singing their nursery rhymes. I haven't quite decided on that yet. I just think that having something to make it seem very, like, stark, very supernatural, as well as tying in Max to it would work really well. Wiggly will always be stood at the top of the pentagram, and he is the one that makes the disc spin and stop for the rest of this scene. I want to keep the choreograph that the Lords in Black used in the original show, because I just love the way that it was choreographed, and it kind of just tied in the relationship between all the Lords that we don't really get, but we can infer from them as well. Cool as I think I am, reprise. So similarly to If I Loved You, they're going to start on opposite sides of the stage in their kind of like argumentative stage, and by the end of the song they'll be back in those positions as well. Max ends up in the middle of the disc, commanding it again and separating the two. In the scene after it, Max will end up stepping off of it to call Steph a Judas, and then that's when Grace steps onto it. So the power is officially shifted and she is controlling the disc. For the lighting, there'll be a white Fresnel over the center of the stage and then a blue wash over the rest of it. And as they sing, a pink wash replaces the blue, but then it goes back to blue when they kind of realize what has to be done. As Max is dying, the LEDs are lit up in a lot of black colors to highlight that he is going back down to wherever they are. They are going back down to Drowsy Town. Steph is the first one to step onto the disc in their moment, and then Peter holds out his hand and she drags him up for them to sing together. Grace and Max end up running out of the gazebo / stage to get a little freaky, but when they come back in, Max is leaning against the chairs, maybe like interacting with the audience and that kind of thing to bring up the comedy of they've just done the Devil's Tango, and then it kind of makes her, I guess, betrayal of him a lot more impactful because he's been joking about it. Grace stands on the disc and it doesn't spin as she tells Max she gave up what she treasured most and she starts moving herself. So she's kind of replaced Max now. Dirty Dudes Must Die. Grace is on the disc the entire song, similarly to how Max was on it for Literal Monster. It starts to spin, not sing, as she reaches the climax of the song Who Will Pray For You, similarly to Nerdy Prudes Must Die. And then the disc finally stops when she says run dudes run, and then show ends. So blue wash with a red pin spot on the disc, just to highlight that she's now evil. The LEDs will light up in the Lord of Black colours as Grace takes her book out, and then they'll be a lot brighter underneath the spinning disc to show that the power they now have over her as like her new deity, I guess. And then the laughing and screaming is done in pitch black. Show ends. You're probably asking why I haven't done all the songs. Well, it's probably because I had maybe no ideas for them, or I didn't think they'd be changed too much. The summoning and High School is Killing Me were two of my biggest ideas that I had, and the rest of them I could kind of figure out as I went, but some of them were just the exact same as the original theatre production. So I just, for the sake of time and my own sanity, I cut them out, just because I didn't want to keep repeating myself multiple times, if that makes sense. But if I did miss out one of your favourite songs, and you've been watching this and had ideas of your own, please leave them in the comments, because I would love to hear them, and then we can have discussions about it, because I need someone else to talk with this about, because none of my friends have seen this musical.